Ever tried counting how many times someone lied to you? Don't. You'll run out of numbers long before you run out of betrayals. And that's exactly where this video begins. Not with comfort, but with calculation. Because numbers don't lie, people do. And if you still measure the world by promises instead of outcomes, you're already losing the game. Machiavelli wrote that men are blind when they confuse appearances with reality. He warned that masks are not decorations, they are weapons. And women, more than anyone, have mastered this weapon. They understand what men forget. Perception bends truth, and truth is powerless if no one believes it. So count if you want. Count the smiles that were strategy, the words that were bait, the love that was negotiation. Count the illusions. But remember, your arithmetic won't change their nature. The cold-blooded truth is this. Machiavelli believed it is better to face deception than to live inside it. Because when you ignore the masks, you don't just lose the woman, you lose the battlefield before the war has even begun. Principle. Illusions are not accidents, they are tactics, and your first weapon is sight. A man once asked, why do they hide their true selves? Why not speak plainly? The answer is brutal, because plain speech is weakness. Masks are not an accessory, they are a survival strategy. Machiavelli wrote that rulers must learn to appear virtuous while being ruthless beneath. The mask protects, deceives, and controls. Women, consciously or unconsciously, inherit this law of power. They know appearances are more useful than honesty. And the man who believes the surface is already defeated by it. The mask is sharper than any blade. It cuts not with steel, but with illusion. Consider how a smile disarms suspicion, how softness covers calculation, how silence can conceal entire storms of intention. You see only what you are allowed to see, and in that blindness you hand over your strength. To Machiavelli, it was never truth that ruled nations, it was the perception of truth. And in personal war, the principle is the same. Many men mistake vulnerability for intimacy. They think that when the mask drops, when secrets are shared, they have finally reached the truth. But Machiavelli would scoff. He knew that even confessions can be theater. The tears may be real, but the timing of those tears, that is strategy. A performance meant to draw you closer, to weaken your suspicion, to make you kneel without knowing you have bent. Imagine a battlefield where the enemy cloaks their army in fog. You cannot see their numbers, their positions, their weapons. That fog is the mask. And what kind of general marches blindly into the smoke? Only a fool. Yet, countless men do exactly this in relationships. They confuse performance for reality, and in doing so, they lose the ability to negotiate, to resist, to see clearly. Machiavelli believed that people would rather believe a beautiful lie than face an ugly truth. And women, understanding this, instinctively craft illusions to be believed. They know the soft lie keeps peace longer than the cold truth. They know the mask wins devotion, while exposure breeds resentment. And so they keep the mask. Because it is not cowardice, it is power. But here is the paradox. Men claim they want honesty, yet most cannot handle it. If every thought, every instinct, every ambition was laid bare before you, you would recoil. You would call it cruelty. And so they give you masks you can live with, smiles you can adore, stories you can believe. The illusion is a shield not just for them, but for you. Yet while it protects, it also imprisons. For if you only see what they want you to see, then you live not in reality, but in their design. What then is the strategy? To tear away the mask? No. That only creates resistance. A mask ripped away will always be replaced with another. The wiser path, the Machiavellian path, is observation. Watch the cracks. Study the silences. Learn the patterns that betray intention. A mask can be flawless in speech, but hands tremble, eyes dart, tones shift. Do not demand the truth. Force the truth to reveal itself by watching what cannot be concealed. Understand this. The mask is not weakness. It is mastery. And the man who rages against masks, who begs for brutal honesty, exposes himself as naive. He does not understand the rules of power. Machiavelli would never call that strength. He would call it surrender. Strength is not in demanding the mask be dropped. It is in seeing through it without needing it to fall. Think of a king on his throne. His crown is not truth, but symbol. It means power even if the man beneath it is frail. The crown is a mask, and his rule depends on it. Likewise, every relationship is a throne room of perception. She wears the mask to rule her realm. And unless you learn to see both crown and face, you remain a subject, never a sovereign. The mask is sharper than any weapon because it kills without spilling blood. It kills suspicion, independence, awareness. It lulls you into believing you have sight when in truth you are blind. And blindness is death in the game of power. So the first cold-blooded truth is this: you are not fighting people, you are fighting masks. To expect unfiltered honesty is to expect the storm to bow before your wishes. The storm does not bow. It rages, it conceals, it destroys. Your role is not to stop it, but to stand unmoved within it, watching, calculating, adjusting. Machiavelli would say, appearances rule the world, not reality. And women, knowingly or not, wield this principle with perfection. If you fail to understand the mask, you fail to understand the game. And the man who does not understand the game is destined to be its pawn. Principle: the mask is not weakness. The mask is the weapon. And your first act of power is not to strip it away, but to see through it coldly, silently, without illusion. Most men still live under a spell. They believe that affection, warm words, soft touches, whispered promises, means love. They imagine it is unconditional, pure, eternal. But Machiavelli would laugh at such illusions. To him, affection was never proof of loyalty. It was currency, a resource to be spent when it purchased advantage, and withheld when it no longer yielded profit. Women, knowingly or unknowingly, understand this truth. Affection flows not from some infinite reservoir of devotion, but from a calculation. It is given when strength inspires it. It is withheld when weakness corrodes it. Just as a ruler rewards loyalty in times of stability and punishes betrayal in times of unrest, affection is dispensed as strategy, not as sentiment. Picture a king handing out gold coins to his subjects. He does not do it for love. He does it to keep peace, to buy allegiance, to ensure his crown does not topple. In the same way, affection is coinage. It warms, it soothes, but it also binds. When you begin to crave it, when you begin to depend on it, you have already lost. Because what is given can be withdrawn, and what is withdrawn leaves you starving. Machiavelli warned that men who rely on love are doomed to be betrayed by it. He wrote that fear binds more securely than affection, because affection fades but necessity endures. Translate that into the realm of relationships. If your worth to her diminishes, so will her warmth. If your strength falters, so will her embrace. That is not cruelty, it is law, but here is where the trap lies. Most men respond to the withdrawal of affection by giving more of their own. They beg, they plead, they overcompensate. They pay out their own currency in the hope of rekindling hers. But this only cheapens them further. The more freely you give, the less it is worth. Machiavelli would remind you, a currency without scarcity has no value. Think of affection as fire. When it glows, it warms the room. But when it is withheld, the cold sets in. The weak man rushes to build a larger fire, throwing in his pride, his time, his energy, until he is left in ashes. The stronger man learns to sit in the cold, unshaken. He understands that fire is never permanent. It must be respected when present, but never depended on as eternal. The emotional shift is this: affection is not validation, it is negotiation. It is not proof of love, it is proof of power. When you inspire, when you command respect, when you remain rare and disciplined, affection flows more freely. When you collapse, when you beg, When you expose need, affection dries up, leaving you parched in a desert you once thought was paradise. Machiavelli believed appearances matter more than reality. If you appear strong, you will receive affection even when she doubts you. If you appear weak, she will withhold it even when she still cares. Affection follows strength, not sincerity, and sincerity without strength is a beggar's plea. So stop seeing affection as reward. See it as transaction. When she gives it, recognize it, but do not worship it. When she withholds it, do not chase. Instead, calculate. Ask yourself, what shifted in the balance of power? What part of the negotiation turned? Because love is not blind, it is opportunistic. It looks where strength shines brightest. The man who survives the withdrawal of affection without panic becomes untouchable. He sees what others do not. That affection is seasonal, like the harvest. You do not curse the winter for its cold. You prepare for it. You do not expect the sun to stay at noon forever. You adapt as it fades. And when affection returns, you welcome it, not as entitlement but as currency moving back into your possession. In this way, affection loses its power to enslave you. It cannot make you desperate. It cannot make you crawl. It cannot strip your pride. Because you understand, the law behind it, affection is coin, and if you do not spend yourself to earn it, it will flow naturally to you when you remain sovereign. Machiavelli would never call dependence love. He would call it captivity. And the man who depends on affection is a prisoner in a gilded cage, fed crumbs of warmth as long as he obeys. Break the illusion. See the transaction for what it is, and then decide, will you pay the price, or will you remain the king who lets others spend their coin to reach you? Principle: affection is not love. It is currency. Spend it wisely. Expect it conditionally, and never kneel before it. Every man wants to believe in loyalty. He wants to believe in the fairy tale that once a heart chooses him, it will never waver, never shift, never turn away. But Machiavelli wrote with a colder pen, loyalty is never absolute. It survives only as long as it serves advantage. Princes, he warned, should expect loyalty from their subjects only while they are strong, only while obedience pays more than rebellion. Women, like rulers and rivals, understand this truth instinctively. Loyalty is not a crown of eternal devotion. It is a rope, and ropes fray under pressure. It is strong, yes, but only to a point. And when pulled too far, when weighed down too heavily, it snaps. A man who believes loyalty is forever is a man building his fortress on sand. Look carefully at the stories of kings and rulers. Alliances last until fortunes shift. A prince trusted his allies only to find them switch sides the moment a stronger power rose. Was this betrayal? No. It was survival. And women live by the same law. They remain loyal while the bond sustains them, while their needs are met, while respect endures. But when weakness overtakes strength, when chaos replaces order, when another path promises greater security or fulfillment, the rope breaks. This is not cruelty. It is design. To expect otherwise is to expect the storm to spare you because you once admired the sun. Storms do not care. They move where they must. And loyalty is a storm, calm one day, violent the next, shifting with the winds of circumstance. The weak man rages at this truth. He demands eternal devotion. He clings tighter as loyalty fades, only to choke it out more quickly. The stronger man accepts it. He does not expect permanence. He prepares for change. He builds a foundation so secure that even when loyalty wavers, he remains unbroken. Machiavelli would remind him, fear binds faster than love. In human ties, necessity and respect endure where affection fails. Think of loyalty as a contract, not a vow. The contract renews itself as long as value is exchanged. When the contract is broken, it is not betrayal in the poetic sense, it is renegotiation in the cold sense. The one who provided no longer provides. The one who followed finds reason to lead elsewhere. And so the pact dissolves. Men who understand this principle no longer live in shock when loyalty shifts. They stop being beggars for devotion. Instead, they rule themselves like sovereigns. They inspire loyalty not through demand but through strength. They ensure they are difficult to replace not by clinging, but by commanding respect that endures beyond mood or temptation. Machiavelli warned rulers not to rely solely on loyalty, but to maintain power through necessity. Likewise, a man who wishes to keep loyalty must remain necessary, must remain valuable, must remain strong. The moment he becomes a burden rather than a pillar, loyalty cracks. And no tears, no pleading, no sacrifice can repair what has already dissolved. Yet here lies the strategy. If you stop expecting eternal loyalty, you stop fearing its loss. You stop giving away power in the hope of securing what can never be guaranteed. Instead, you build your strength so that loyalty, while it lasts, strengthens you. But when it departs, you remain whole. You do not collapse when others leave. You stand because your foundation was never built on them. The emotional shift is harsh but freeing. Loyalty is not love's eternal flame, it is the shadow of circumstance. It lasts as long as it benefits both sides. When conditions change, so does loyalty. To see this is not bitterness, it is clarity, and clarity is power. So do not worship loyalty. Do not kneel before it as though it were a sacred altar. See it as rope. Strong, yes, but only to a point. If it snaps, you do not die with it. You rise, you rebuild, you reignite. Because your loyalty, first and foremost, must always be to yourself. Machiavelli would say, loyalty is not virtue, it is transaction. And the wise man never mourns the rope that breaks. He learns to weave new ropes, stronger, sharper, tied to pillars of necessity rather than illusions of permanence. Principle. Loyalty is conditional. Expect it to last only as long as you remain strong. Build for the break before it arrives, and when it does, you will still stand sovereign. Tell me something. Where are you watching this video right now? In your room maybe? On the bus? In the gym? Alone in the dark? It doesn't matter where you sit, because the battlefield is not around you, it is inside you. And on that battlefield, your words are the weapons most often turned against you. Machiavelli knew this. He warned that silence is not emptiness, but strategy. And in the game of power, silence cuts deeper than any response. Think of every argument you've ever walked into. Think of the fire in your chest, the urge to speak, to defend, to explain. And now think of how those words were later twisted, misused, stored as ammunition to be thrown back at you. Every word you gave away was a blade placed in another's hand. That is why silence is sharper. It denies your enemy a weapon. Women, like rulers, know how to provoke. They know that by stirring your emotions, they can guide your reactions. Bend your tone, make you confess what you should have concealed. They do not need to strike directly. They only need to make you speak. And the more you speak, the weaker you stand. Machiavelli would call this miscalculation, not mercy. Because mercy is restraint, but miscalculation is the surrender of your advantage. Silence is not weakness. Silence is a fortress. It is the wall against which every storm breaks. When you refuse to answer, when you refuse to justify, you force the other side into chaos. They shout into the void, and the void swallows their voice. Your silence turns their fire into smoke. But silence is not merely absence, it is pressure. The unanswered question grows heavier with every second. The withheld reaction becomes an echo in their mind, louder than words ever could be. They wonder what you are thinking, what you are planning, what you will do next. And in that uncertainty, they torture themselves. This is why Machiavelli wrote that silence is often louder than action. The weak man cannot endure silence. He rushes to fill the void. He fears being misunderstood, so he explains. He fears being forgotten, so he pleads. He fears being unloved, so he performs. And in doing so, he drowns in his own words. The strong man learns to embrace the void. He lets his silence speak for him. He lets the other side stew in their own uncertainty. And from that silence, he draws respect. Imagine a king who answers every accusation, who explains every decision, who justifies himself before every critic. He is no king, he is a servant of opinion. The true king speaks rarely, and when he does, his words strike like thunder. The silence before the thunder is what gives it its power. So let them provoke you. Let them test you. Let them throw their storms against your wall. Do not answer. Do not rush. Do not yield. Remember, the mountain does not explain itself to the storm. The storm rages and passes, the mountain remains. Machiavelli would say, he who speaks less rules more, because every word is a risk, every word a surrender. And the man who masters silence has already mastered himself. Principle: your reaction is their weapon. Your silence is your shield. Withdraw words, embrace the void, and let uncertainty do the work that anger never could. There is a subtle form of robbery that most men never notice. It is not the theft of money or land or possessions. It is the theft of attention. Every time you pour admiration endlessly onto someone, you give away a resource far more precious. Than gold, you hand them your gaze, your focus, your time, and once they own it, they no longer need to earn it. Machiavelli warned rulers to accept admiration but never to admire too freely. Why? Because admiration lowers authority. To admire without restraint is to kneel before another's image, to place them above yourself, to admit, without words, that they are sovereign and you are subject. And women, whether consciously or instinctively, know the weight of this exchange. They understand that admiration given too easily becomes a chain tied to your own neck. Think of attention as a torch. When you shine it on her constantly, you blind yourself. You stop seeing the shadows where truth lives. You stop noticing the cracks in the mask, the calculations behind the charm. You believe only in the glow you created. And once blinded, you are no longer the observer. You are the worshiper. Machiavelli would never call that strength. He would call it submission. But admiration is addictive. Men think giving more will win them more in return. They imagine that if they shower praise, devotion, and validation, they will secure loyalty. Yet what happens is the opposite. The more you give, the less it is valued. A coin minted in abundance loses its worth. A compliment offered every day becomes noise, not music. Women understand scarcity. They know that what is rare carries weight. One glance withheld is stronger than 100 given freely. One word of recognition, carefully rationed, becomes unforgettable. This is why admiration must be calculated. It must be rationed like a king handing out gold, not spilled like a beggar tossing coins into the street. Ask yourself, when you admire too freely, what are you truly doing? You are draining your power. You are centering her above yourself. You are making her the throne, while you stand as subject, and no throne ever admires the servant at its feet. The shift, then, is this. Admiration must flow upward, not downward. It must come to you, not leave you. You become the object of attention, not its constant supplier. The man who disciplines his admiration becomes rare. His praise means something because it is not scattered. His silence, his restraint, his unshaken focus elsewhere. This becomes the mystery that women crave. Machiavelli would say, truth is useful only when it serves power. Likewise, admiration is only powerful when it serves you, not when it enslaves you. To admire wisely is to command respect. To admire foolishly is to erode it. Think of a king walking among his subjects. If he bows to them, even once, his crown is tarnished. But if he walks tall, speaks rarely, and offers recognition sparingly, his every word becomes legend. Do the same with your attention. Let it be rare, measured, valuable. Understand this. Admiration freely given is theft. It robs you of focus, of power, of respect. The more you give, the less you own. But admiration disciplined, kept scarce, kept sharp, is not theft. It is strategy. It reminds her that your gaze is not free. It must be earned, protected, and cherished. Principle. Admiration is not tribute to be poured out. It is currency to be rationed. The man who controls where his attention goes controls the throne, and the throne must always be yours. Desire feels natural. It feels like attraction, like instinct, like something beyond reason. But Machiavelli would say, nothing in human behavior is ever neutral. Desire is not a gift. It is leverage. And the one who knows how to wield it commands the terms of the exchange. When you desire, you expose yourself. Your glance lingers, your focus shifts, your guard lowers. That flicker in your eyes, that hesitation in your voice, it reveals your hunger. And hunger is weakness because hunger can be fed or starved. Women, whether consciously or not, understand this law. They know that desire is a lever. Press it at the right time, and men will bend. Hold it back at the right moment, and men will beg. Machiavelli wrote that rulers must never allow their ambitions to be controlled by passion. To be ruled by passion is to lose control of judgment. In the same way, men who are ruled by desire surrender their clarity. They cannot calculate, they cannot resist, they cannot negotiate. They are blinded by the flame. And once blinded, they are easy to lead. Think of desire as fire. It lights your path, but it can also consume you. A disciplined fire can warm a city. An uncontrolled blaze can reduce it to ashes. When you let desire rage unchecked, you burn your own fortress down from within. But when you control it, when you govern the flame, you decide who feels the warmth and who is left in the cold. Every glance, every smile, every touch is not just affection, it is negotiation. The one who controls the pace of desire controls the battlefield. She offers just enough to stir your hunger, then withdraws just enough to keep you chasing. Like a general retreating not out of weakness but to stretch the enemy's line, she controls distance to control the war. Most men misunderstand this. They believe desire is proof of connection. They see it as something pure, something that unites. But Machiavelli would never call that truth. He would call it illusion. Desire unites only as long as it serves power. When the leverage fades, when the flame no longer benefits one side, the bond collapses. What men called love was often only desire wrapped in silk. The shift is not to deny desire, but to master it, to recognize when it is being used against you, to learn to hold it in check, to let it burn inside you without dictating your choices. The man who can feel desire but not bow to it becomes untouchable. He flips the negotiation. Suddenly, it is not his hunger being leveraged but his restraint. And restraint in this arena is magnetic. Imagine two kings facing each other. One cannot control his thirst. The other sits calm, silent, composed. Which one looks like the ruler? Which one commands respect? The man who bows to desire is already a subject. The man who governs it remains a sovereign. Machiavelli would say, "He who cannot master desire will be mastered by it." This is not advice, it is law. It governs relationships, alliances, betrayals. It governs the very way humans maneuver around each other. To ignore it is to live as prey. So remember, desire is never neutral. Every spark is strategy. Every glance a negotiation. The battlefield is not only in words, but in heat, in silence, in distance. Control your fire, or it will consume you. Principle: desire is never innocent, it is leverage, and the man who governs his hunger rules the terms of the war. Betrayal. The very word tastes bitter in the mouth. Men treat it as a crime against the sacred, as if loyalty should last forever, as if promises were carved into stone. But Machiavelli, cold and precise, warned against such illusions. He knew the truth that few dare to accept. Betrayal is not an accident. It is a certainty of human nature. Look back at history. Kings trusted their advisors until daggers appeared in the dark. Princes swore alliances until stronger armies offered better terms. Subjects cheered their rulers in the square one day and hung them from the gates the next. Betrayal was not the exception. It was the rhythm of politics, the heartbeat of ambition. And in the private wars of love and loyalty, the pattern repeats. Women, like rulers, wield betrayal not as cruelty but as calculation. It is not always cold blood. It is often simple survival. She may stand by you while you are strong. But when weakness spreads, when respect dies, when opportunity elsewhere shines brighter, loyalty cracks. It does not mean she never cared. It means circumstances changed. And Machiavelli would remind, you, fortune turns faster than love. The naive man is always shocked. He calls it heartbreak. He says, she changed, she betrayed me. But Machiavelli would call him blind. She did not change. She simply revealed the law of survival that was there all along. Betrayal is the storm that always waits beyond the horizon. To live as though it will never come is to build your city with no walls. Ask yourself, what kind of general builds a fortress with no defense against siege? What kind of ruler trusts so blindly that he prepares no plan for rebellion, only the doomed? And yet men walk into love with this same foolishness. They expect eternal loyalty, eternal devotion, as if the laws of power bend for romance. They do not. The storm arrives whether you prepare or not. The strong man prepares. He expects betrayal, not in paranoia, but in clarity. He knows every alliance, every bond, every vow is conditional. And so he builds his strength in silence. He guards his independence. He never gives away more than he can afford to lose. When betrayal comes, he bleeds, yes, but he does not collapse. He endures, because he planned for the break long before it arrived. Machiavelli wrote that it is safer to be feared than loved. Why? Because love fades, but fear, necessity, and respect endure longer. This does not mean you must live as a tyrant. It means you must anchor yourself in strength, not affection. A bond based on fear of losing you will outlast a bond based only on love for having you. Love is a flame, fear is a wall, and walls endure storms longer than flames. But here is the paradox. Betrayal also clarifies. It burns away illusion. It reveals who valued you for your strength and who merely clung to your shadow. It shows you the truth Machiavelli prized, that loyalty is rented, never owned. Betrayal frees you from the fantasy of permanence. It hardens you. It makes you sovereign over yourself. Think of the general who watches his allies defect mid-battle. At first, despair. But then, clarity. He sees who remains, who fights with conviction, who can be trusted for now. He rebuilds his strategy not on illusions but on reality. The man who has endured betrayal becomes harder to fool, harder to sway, harder to topple. He becomes cold, but he becomes free. The weak man begs in the face of betrayal. He pleads, bargains, humiliates himself, hoping to restore what is already lost. But betrayal, once acted, is never fully reversed. Even if she stays, the rope is already frayed. Respect, once snapped, does not weave itself whole again. Machiavelli would say, trust once broken is no longer trust. It is a performance, waiting for its second collapse. So what is the strategy? Do not fear betrayal. Expect it. Study it. Let it sharpen you. Build relationships, but do not build your entire fortress upon them. Give loyalty, but give it with clarity, knowing it can be withdrawn. Keep something that is always yours. Your silence, your distance, your discipline. That way, when betrayal strikes, you do not vanish with it. The emotional shift here is cruel but necessary. Betrayal is not the end. It is part of the cycle. What destroys the weak builds the strong. Every betrayal survived is another layer of armor. Every disappointment endured is another wall added to your fortress. And the man who expects betrayal is never destroyed by it. He absorbs it, transforms it, and stands taller. Machiavelli would say, the wise ruler trusts with caution, but rules with preparation. Likewise, the wise man loves with fire, but guards with stone. To do otherwise is to live in fantasy, waiting for the knife you chose not to see. Principle: betrayal is inevitable. To mourn it is weakness. To prepare for it is sovereignty. And, when it comes, as it always will, You will not fall with the storm. You will remain the fortress that endures after the walls around you crumble. Closeness feels warm. It feels safe. It feels like proof of trust. But Machiavelli, sharp as a blade, would warn you, closeness corrodes power. For the more familiar you become, the less awe you command. The more available you are, the less valuable you appear. Respect withers not in absence, but in excess presence. Think of the sun. From a distance it is revered, life-giving, magnificent. Yet if the sun were to sit in your room, its heat would not inspire devotion. It would scorch you alive. Power is like that. It must be admired from afar. When you let someone stand too close to your fire, they stop respecting its light. They complain about the heat. They demand more. They forget what it feels like to live without it. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must be loved enough to be followed, but never so familiar that he loses his crown. Fear and respect thrive in distance. Closeness invites contempt. The same principle rules relationships. When you collapse all distance, when you give away every moment, every secret, every corner of yourself, you stop being sovereign. You become ordinary, and ordinary is never admired. Most men make this mistake. They mistake constant presence for strength, thinking loyalty is secured by never leaving her side. They believe accessibility equals devotion. But what they build is not respect, it is boredom. A man always there is taken for granted, his value measured in habit, not in awe. Machiavelli would never call that power. He would call it surrender. Distance, however, creates scarcity. Scarcity breeds value. A rare presence commands more attention than a constant one. A word spoken rarely echoes longer than words spilled daily. A man who can withdraw, who can vanish into his own silence, becomes unforgettable. His absence makes the other wonder, question, chase. His distance turns ordinary affection into restless longing. But distance is not cruelty. It is discipline. It is the refusal to let another consume you fully. It is the choice to guard your fire, to reveal it only when it serves, never when it enslaves. The weak man fears distance, terrified she will leave if he withdraws. The strong man uses distance as a weapon. He knows mystery is a crown, silence is armor, absence is strategy. Think of a king who dines with his subjects every night, who laughs in the taverns, who reveals all his weaknesses in the open. He is no longer a king. He is a companion. His throne is invisible, his aura destroyed. Contrast that with the ruler who appears rarely, who speaks only when necessary, whose presence is an event, not a routine. His distance magnifies his authority. His scarcity multiplies his power. Women, like all subjects of power, feel this truth instinctively. They crave the man who is not fully theirs, who remains partly untouchable, partly withdrawn. They test boundaries, yes, but deep down, they respect the man who cannot be consumed, because his distance reminds them he is sovereign over himself, not dependent on their validation. Machiavelli would say, respect grows not from touch, but from distance. This is not an invitation to neglect, but a command to balance. Give enough, presence to maintain the bond, but withhold enough to maintain authority. Appear, then vanish. Speak, then fall silent. Offer fire, then retreat into shadow. This rhythm keeps your value alive. The emotional shift is clear. Stop trying to hold power through constant closeness. Hold power through absence, through scarcity, through the courage to walk away. The one who can withdraw becomes the one who controls. Power demands distance. Without it, you are consumed. With it, you are remembered. The man who learns this principle stops begging for respect. He commands it, silently, without words, without explanations. Principle. Distance is not weakness. Distance is sovereignty. Be present enough to inspire devotion, absent enough to command respect. For the sun is admired not because it is near, but because it cannot be touched. Noise is everywhere. Promises, complaints, excuses, explanations. Most people live drowning in words. They talk to prove love. They argue to protect pride. They plead to avoid loss. But Machiavelli, master of strategy, knew the power of the opposite. He wrote that silence often cuts sharper than any response. For in silence there is no weakness to exploit, no opening to attack, no flame to fan. Silence is the final weapon of power. Think about it. Words reveal. They expose your thoughts, your desperation, your intentions. The moment you speak, you are vulnerable. She knows what you fear, what you hope, what you crave. She can twist your words, use them against you, feed on them like fuel. But silence? Silence is a fortress. It gives nothing. It starves the other of certainty. It forces them into their own imagination, a battlefield you control without moving. Machiavelli believed appearances matter more than truths. Silence is the art of shaping appearance without effort. You withdraw, and the other begins to write their own narrative. They ask, is he angry? Is he planning something? Has he moved on? Their uncertainty becomes their prison. Every second you remain silent, their mind works harder against itself. This is why silence is feared more than rage. Rage is predictable, silence is infinite. In relationships, silence reveals who depends on you. It tests the strength of the bond. The weak cannot stand in silence. They panic, they chase, they demand answers. The strong sit within it like kings in their throne room, unmoved, unhurried. The man who masters silence never looks desperate. He never looks broken. He looks untouchable. Picture two generals on the battlefield. One shouts commands, waves his sword, reveals his strategy in motion. The other stands still, says nothing, moves only when it matters. Which one do you fear more? The loud general wastes energy, exposes his rhythm, exhausts his men. The silent general becomes a myth. His very stillness breeds dread because no one knows when or how he will strike. Women too understand the weapon of silence. They will withdraw, go quiet, retreat into shadows, forcing you to chase. And most men always do. They cannot handle the void. They rush to fill it with apologies, promises, explanations. They break themselves on the silence. But Machiavelli would warn, the moment you chase noise into silence, you surrender your crown. You confess without being asked. You expose yourself. For free, instead, learn to use silence as counterattack. Do not explain every move. Do not justify every decision. Do not beg to be understood. Machiavelli himself never sought understanding, only obedience. He knew that clarity, when given too freely, dissolves authority. Silence, however, preserves it. The less you reveal, the more powerful you appear. This does not mean you never speak. It means you speak rarely, precisely, like a blade drawn only at the decisive moment. Words, when rationed, gain weight. A single phrase dropped into the silence echoes louder than hours of argument. A single glance, unaccompanied by explanation, becomes unforgettable. The man who combines silence with control becomes a storm, disguised as calm. The emotional shift here is profound. Stop trying to defend yourself with words. Stop bleeding your power through explanations. Let your silence do what noise never could. Command respect without lifting a finger. Machiavelli would remind you, silence is not emptiness, it is strategy. It is fire hidden beneath ash, a dagger concealed in shadow. It is the one weapon they cannot predict, cannot counter, cannot exhaust. So when the time comes, and it always will, when you are tempted to beg, to explain, to defend yourself, remember this. Silence is stronger than any plea. Silence is colder than any rejection. Silence is final. Principle. Words beg. Silence commands. Master it, and you hold the final weapon. For the man who rules his silence rules the battlefield itself. And now we arrive at the end. 9 truths, each one a blade sharpened by Machiavelli's cold hand. You've seen illusions stripped away, loyalties questioned, masks revealed. The question is no longer whether you like these truths. It is whether you will live with them or perish beneath the weight of denial. Think of where you were when this video began, counting lies, counting betrayals, counting illusions as if numbers could protect you. But Machiavelli would laugh at that. He knew numbers cannot save you. Only clarity can. Only power can. Only distance, silence, and strategy can. So let me ask you one final time. How much of yourself have you already given away? How many battles have you lost before the war even began? And how much longer will you let your power leak into the hands of those who smile while sharpening knives? Machiavelli would say, "A man who cannot withdraw cannot rule. Withdrawal is not weakness, it is command. Reframing is not fear, it is strategy. Silence is not emptiness, it is fire waiting in shadow. This is the choice left before you. Keep playing the game blind, or reposition yourself as the one who sets the terms. The world will not hand you respect. Women will not hand you loyalty. People will not hand you truth. You take it, or you live without it. And so, let them wonder where you went. Let them feel the absence they thought they could control. Let your silence echo louder than their words. Withdraw, not in defeat, but in mastery. Because in the end, Machiavelli would not comfort you with promises. He would hand you the crown of strategy and whisper, "Now they know not to cross you." Principle: do not explain, do not chase, withdraw, reframe, rule. Your silence is your legacy now.